So the average wage of a first-year carpenter apprentice here in Colorado is 17 bucks an hour. That means a few start a little bit less, a few start a little bit more, but the average is $17 an hour for a first-year carpenter apprentice. I started in commercial construction as a first-year carpenter apprentice at $17 an hour. That was 27 years ago. I'm Charlie Adams. What's up, Colorado? This show is 100% satire. I don't represent anybody, and this show doesn't represent anybody. So I'm gonna repeat that. I started commercial construction as a first-year apprentice carpenter 27 years ago for $17 an hour. 27 years ago. First-year carpenters in today's world start at $17 an hour. Now, by the way, to add to this, I started as an apprentice carpenter in Albuquerque, New Mexico. You know, one of the poorest states in the union, if not the poorest state. But we're here in Colorado. Colorado's not a poor state, not by any stretch of the imagination. But what are we starting our carpenter apprentices at? $17 an hour. That's the average rate. There's a serious problem with that, Colorado. That means 27 years have gone by. Not a single wage hike. I think we can do better. I know we can do better. Okay, Colorado, so let's delve into this a little farther. How does this even happen? How does an entire industry not have a single wage hike in 27 years? Well, it turns out there's an enormous amount of different factors that go into why this has happened. But today, I just want to touch on one particular factor that really irks me. In my county, in my hometown, Colorado, the largest general contractor, home builder, has a crew of around 15 workers. Not a single one of them is an employee. Now, here's the crazy thing. This contractor, they self-perform work. They self-perform the typical carpentry indices. And they even brag about it. And that's even a selling point for them is, hey, we've got more control over our job sites because we self-perform. But how are they doing? How are they really doing it? Illegally. What they're saying is none of our workers are employees. They're subcontractors or independent contractors. Now, what does this mean? This means that even though they tell them what to do, when to do it, where to do it, and how to do it, they manage them just like they would a regular employee. Their entire business is structured just like a typical construction company doing self-performed work, which is they've got an owner, they've got a superintendent, they've got a foreman, they've got carpenters, and then they've got carpenter apprentices. And sometimes they even have laborers. So it's systematically set up just like any other legal construction company doing self-performing work. So first things first, why do they self-perform work? Well, it's pretty simple. They have more control over that particular type of work. Let's say they self-perform the foundation. They take their crews, their people, their workers, not subcontractors, although that's what they're saying they are, but their workers, their carpenters, apprentices, laborers, their foremen, their super, they stick them on a job site and they perform that foundation work, okay? And that's critical because as a general contractor, you've got complete control over them. You can tell them when to do it, where to do it, how to do it, all those kinds of things. And that is highly advantageous in the construction world. Not to mention, you can make money per hour per person. So let's say a carpenter. You're making an hourly wage on top of the wage that you pay the carpenter. Okay, now that's typical. However, in this particular case, they've got a very illegal setup. So as a carpenter, an apprentice, foreman, etc., they're forced to start up a small business. Okay, and even though most of the carpenters and the apprentices and even the foremen really don't know anything about business, really have no interest in being a small business. They just want a job. They're forced into this system. They're forced to start up a small business. And on top of that, they're forced to carry liability insurance for themselves and their business. Well, that is critical because what that means is the general contractor does not have any liability over those workers. Even though he's telling them what to do, when to do it, where to do it, and how to do it, he's managing the company just like he would a normal legal company with real employees. He's not taking any of the liability. Now, like I said, Colorado, this is highly illegal, but this is the setup that's in place, okay? And so let's give an example. So let's say a fourth-year carpenter. He completed his fourth year, so now he's considered a fourth-year journeyman carpenter. And he accidentally drops a hammer on somebody's toe. And that somebody was not wearing steel toe boots, so it broke a toe. Now, I hope to never see this happen, but let's just give this as an example. So he breaks somebody's toe. They got to go to the hospital. They get their toe repaired. They're in bandages. They lose some work because of it. That carpenter is responsible for that because he's a subcontractor, supposedly. He's a small business and he's got his own liability insurance. He's liable for the work that he does and the things he does on that job site and anybody that works under him under his company name. So he has to take the heat for that broken toe, right? And now maybe it's a claim on his insurance. Well, that might not sound like much, but guess what happens? His insurance starts skyrocketing. Now, to give you an idea, in this particular scenario, this general contractor, they self-perform foundations, framing, siding, exterior trim, interior trim, windows and doors, roofing, and a few other things. So they self-perform a whole lot of different things, right? Well, when that carpenter goes down and he gets his liability insurance, he says, hey, I need to be covered for all these things. And that insurance lady or man says, okay, well, it's going to run you this much. And that carpenter says, oh my gosh, there's no way I can afford that. I'm only making $20 an hour. There's no way I can afford $700 a month for liability insurance. Well, if you want to be covered for all these things, you're going to have to, that's what it's going to cost you. That carpenter says, no, there's absolutely no way I can afford to do that. My boss said, just go down here and get the cheapest insurance I can get. So what about handyman insurance? Or what about trim carpenter insurance? I bet that's not very expensive. And so the insurance person comes back and says, oh, yep, insurance carpentry runs $220 a month. And he says, great, I'll take it. And that insurance company says, hey, you can't do work outside of interior trim carpentry. And the guy says, oh yeah, all right, whatever. You know, that's fine, whatever. I just need the insurance. Well, that carpenter, right off the bat, before he even goes to work to start making money, he's already put himself in a bad position. So he goes off and he works for this slimeball general contractor doing self-performing work with his 15 workers. This carpenter drops that hammer, it breaks that toe. When the insurance claim hits, the insurance company does an investigation and they say, hey, you were doing structural framing. You weren't doing interior trim. The house isn't even built yet. You can't do interior trim. What are you even on this job site for? And the carpenter says, uh-oh, and he's stuck. Well, he's stuck. The general contractor's not. The general contractor's sitting back going, oh, not my responsibility. I'm not liable for any of these people. They're subcontractors, even though he's using them to self-perform work as a 15-person crew. He's saying, oh, I'm not liable. You see what I'm getting at, Colorado? You see the issue at hand? This carpenter barely making $20 an hour, which, by the way, is not a good wage. And I'll go into that on another video about how $20 an hour is a horrible wage for a carpenter. But this guy's making $20 an hour. He's now forced to shell out his own money for this broken toe, which runs into the several thousands, because like I was saying, that guy lost several days, probably weeks worth of work. So he couldn't go back to work because he got a broken toe, biggest toe. It's hard to be a carpenter when you got a broken toe, right? Okay, so he's got to shell out thousands of dollars, even though he's making $20 an hour. And on top of that, he's being forced to pay for his own liability insurance. And he's forced to pay and have his own small business. This is a huge problem. And it's a scam. It is an absolute scam. There is nothing legal about this racket, because that's more or less what it is. It's a racket. See, if it was one carpenter that did, I don't know, 4 hours worth of work a month for this general contractor, then and they charged whatever they wanted to charge, like a traditional subcontractor wage rate, which is somewhere around, I don't know, $45 to $85 an hour. Because remember, they're liable for their own work, right? So they've got to charge more. They've got a business to run. Let's say that scenario was taking place. That's completely legal. That is a very normal legal system. This blatant misclassification of employees as subcontractors is a highly illegal business. So, Colorado, to recap, what's one of the major issues that we have in the construction industry as carpenters and carpenter apprentices and laborers and workers in general? The blatant misclassification of employees as subcontractors. And it's so bad, it's taking place in such a rampant way that in my hometown, Colorado, in my own county that I live in, the largest contractor is not only blatantly misclassifying their workers, but he's making millions of dollars per year on those workers. You see what I'm getting at? This carpenter's forced, he doesn't have a choice. He's forced to have liability insurance and a small business just to be a carpenter, be told what to do, when to do it, where to do it, and how to do it. Working underneath a foreman, working underneath a superintendent, working underneath the owner. But yet somehow he's liable for everything. There's lots of other issues with this system, but I just wanted to touch base on some of them. And in future videos, I'm going to go over in more detail all the other issues with this system. But think about that. You've got a general contractor literally making millions of dollars on his workforce or from his workforce, his self-performing workforce, all the while not taking any of the liability. Not a bit. Okay, Colorado, so if you'd like to learn more about Colorado carpentry wages and the problems with our wages, check out part 2 of this video, maybe part 3, and maybe even part 4. Until then, have yourself a beautiful, absolutely beautiful Colorado Bluebird Day.